All right, welcome back for week 8. This is the Mind Men series on eradicating addiction. I'm Christy O'Connor. I'm your host and the creator of this content. So this week we are going to create a strategy for creating an isotonic existence for ourselves. And what I mean by this is creating a situation where your internal charge, your internal frequency, vibration matches what you're interacting with in the outside world. Okay. So we do this subconsciously, right? Historically, we've probably done it in more negative ways. So if you're walking around and you're grumpy and you don't like everything and you don't like anyone, you're probably viewing the world through that lens of negativity. So you're probably interacting mostly with what is in the external world that is negative, and you're also probably cultivating more of that from other people in your interactions with them. So that's an example of how you, in this subconscious way, take the vibrational energy that you carry and create the external situation where that is what you're in fact experiencing. So we can take this and we can apply it to positivity, which is what we're going to do here. So as you increase your internal frequency by doing this work, by changing your behaviors, by understanding the negative emotions and compulsions that you've carried up to this point in your life and doing away with them, we're going to make sure that as you increase your charge as a result of doing these things, that you are creating an external world environment that is supportive of this higher vibration that you now carry, right? Because what can happen is there can be a mismatch here. So as you increase in your vibratory pattern, there can be a tendency to continue to kind of pull out the more negative elements of the external world or of other people or whatever, mostly because that's what you're used to. And then you feel the pain of there being that mismatch, and it can kind of send you back into this more dense negative space. So it's important to, as you're cultivating this increased frequency inside of yourself, to understand how to manifest and create that on the outside too, because you're going to kind of go back and forth, right? Like you're taking time to go inward, you're taking time to yourself, you're taking time to do this inner work. Now we also have to do the work of making sure that we implement that in our outside lives too. So taking these elements, these structures of our lives, our marriages, our careers, our recreational activities, and making sure that they have the capacity to increase in vibration as well. So this is a really important piece of not falling back into old habits of negativity. So it can be a little bit tricky at first because you've probably spent the majority of your life in these more negative places. And so there are things that are not going to be capable of carrying a higher frequency for you that have historically been in your life. And so obviously when we deconstruct these things and when we cut ties with them and we move on, that can be really difficult. But there's a lot of opportunities to practice with some of the things that maybe aren't these main pillars right away. And as you progress in a natural way, you can deal with some of these bigger facets of your life as you're ready and able to do so. So that is what we are going to cover this week. For symptom management, depending on where you left off, you're going to be at a slightly different place with this intervention. So if you are in a place where you have been quit or are trying to quit, then stay there, keep trying, or stay quit. Okay. So if you're failing and you find yourself falling into shame or guilt around that, try to just pick yourself up as quickly as possible and keep going. And every time that you pick yourself back up and recommit, just recommit to stay quit. And also notice maybe what percentage of the time you're spending in authentically wanting to be quit and having gratitude for that and being excited about that and being in craving and having to fight that and having to sort of sit on your hands so that you don't go back to that behavior. Because there's definitely going to be a period with this where you're going to occupy both spaces depending on what's going on in your interior state, depending on what's going on in the outside world. So the flippy floppy thing is normal. For there to be some periods of time where you're gung-ho about quitting and You don't think you're ever going to need it again. And then the next day, maybe something happens, maybe something just, not even palpable outside necessarily, but happens internally. And all of a sudden you want to go back to the thing and you just feel this very strong compulsive urge to do so. It's all normal. So more and more you will occupy the space of not needing and not wanting it. And eventually it'll be 100% of the time. So until it reaches that point, you have to be patient with yourself. You have to stay out of shame and guilt, and you have to just keep trying. So keep up with that. Don't get discouraged if you're not perfect with this or if it's not going as well as you would like for it to. The last interval that I did with cigarettes was 6 months long. Okay. And in that 6 months before the compulsion left entirely, I would say that I spent somewhere between 30 and 40% of the time authentically not wanting it and really feeling done with it, and probably 60 to 70% of the time still wanting it to varying degrees. And so there was this sort of push-pull thing that was happening. But what happened after that 6 months is I went back to it for a short period of time, realized very quickly that 30 to 40% of the time that I was spending in not wanting it was where I was going. And then when I kicked it, it was done and the compulsion left, and it has not been back since. So there are different ways that this looks for people, but just keep trying, be tolerant of the back and forth. It's just the time that your brain takes to reprogram itself. Okay. It does not mean that you're going to want it forever, because that's the result of doing this inner work and dealing with the wounding, is that you're not going to want it. And that's the part that mainstream medicine misses, is dealing with the causative factors, which is why people walk around believing this lie that addicts are doomed to want what they've been consuming for the rest of their lives. It's a lie. But you do have to sort of push through this layer of cognitive programming that tells you that you want it. Okay. So if you're in that space, you're trying to quit, but you've kind of been flippy floppy about it, don't be hard on yourself. Just keep going, keep trying. If you were in a place where you were going as long as you can or holding a longer interval, I want you to keep doing that. But as you enter into your interval, I want you to go into it with an intention of quitting forever. Okay. So instead of looking at it as I'm going to go as long as I can without using, but then I'm going to use again, I want you to look at it as like, I'm going to go into this and hold it for as long as I can with an intention of not needing it or using it again. And try to inhabit that space as much as you can. What you'll probably feel here, if you're making that jump in your intention between spreading out an interval or going as long as you can to actually quitting, is some resistance. Okay. You're probably going to feel like, nope, I don't want to commit to quitting. That's it. Like, I just want to like kind of hold on to this thing, keep it in my back pocket, whatever, all normal things. I want you to challenge yourself to move into that place in terms of your intention. Like, I'm going to quit this. And even if it's not this particular time, I'm going to go into this particular time knowing that's where I'm going, and I'm going to hold that as the intention. Okay. So start bringing that into your practice if you haven't done so already. And if you last week were in a place where you were holding a longer interval and you were still kind of doing this, dosed out interval scheme that we've been doing up to this point, I want you to get rid of that. And I want you to just start going as long as you can between use, right? So, and ideally it's longer than the interval that you set for yourself. So try to go as long as you can between use, and try not to overly obsess about the time component if that's the space that you had committed to last week. All right. In the morning, I want you to increase your sit time from 10 minutes to 15 minutes. And in addition to reflecting on the positive aspects of not using, okay, in addition to thinking about how nice it feels to not constantly be engaging in your target behavior, in appreciating this and having gratitude for this. Okay, and in addition to sitting in that in the morning, I want you to also ask yourself the question towards the last 5 or so minutes of your meditation: am I excited and happy about my day today? About the things I'm going to do, about the things I need to do, about how it's going to go, about being an active participant in it? If the answer to that question is yes, then allow yourself to sit in that and be happy, and try to suck in as much of that happiness as you can and hold it as you go about your day. If the answer is no, not really, or yes, but, or something like that, then I want you to ask yourself, what do you need in order to start approaching your days like this? Or what is it in your day that you have to do or participate in that you are not looking forward to? Okay, so try to get really clear on that. And as you do this in the mornings, look for themes here. So you're going to look for the same things that pop up over and over again. So for me, what it was for a long time, and it's the example I'm going to use when we get into the wound healing, it was my job, my work in healthcare. That was the thing that kept up as being this huge barrier to me being able to participate and enjoy my days the way that a person ought to. So look for trends here. Write these things down if you start noticing themes, because we are going to use the answer to that question in the wound healing component of this lecture. And then for the last thing, you are going to keep implementing your positive change, your new habit, your new behavior, whatever you committed to in the last couple of weeks or at the beginning of this series. You're going to keep fostering that. I want you to do it for 15 to 20 minutes a day. It can be broken up if you need to, so say you're learning a language or something and you spend 10 minutes twice a day, great, so work with yourself, do what you can, but try to spend at least 15 to 20 minutes on cultivating this new skill or practice or whatever it may be into your everyday life. All right. So what we're doing with this too is as we're pruning out this negative stuff, this dense, low vibrational stuff that we've been used to living in, we need to bring in something to fill in that space. Okay, because otherwise it's just too easy to slip back into the negativity. So the purpose of cultivating this activity, skill, hobby is to fill in the space that we are cleaning out. Okay, so you start to see how, we're getting rid of a bunch of stuff and then we're moving some new stuff in that's going to help us lead the lives that we ultimately would like to live. So it's important to keep up with that. All right. And aside here, if you find that you are getting stuck with regularity or that things don't seem to be moving forward for you, or that you keep kind of running up against the same roadblock over and over and over again, and you don't feel like you're moving forward in any sort of palpable way, this is a really good time to seek external support. And that can look a number of different ways. Yes, it can look like therapy, but it can also look like body work. Okay, some of us don't need to talk about it, but we need to have that physical stuff, if you will, moved. So rolfing, massage, acupuncture, those can all be helpful adjuncts to this stuff. Therapy is absolutely an option. You could do things like a yoga teacher training or a yoga retreat. There are certainly indications for pharmaceutical intervention at some point, okay? If your nervous system is so inflamed and so activated all the time that you're exhausted, you can't get out of bed, you're in fight or flight all the time, you're flooded with cortisol, if this is the level that you are at, it may not be a terrible idea to look at very short term, I'm talking like 3 months max, pharmaceutical intervention, okay? Because what that kind of does is it kind of acts like a cast for a broken bone for your nervous system. It just kind of creates a barrier where you're kind of blocking the things that are activating an already angry system from being able to get in there. So it can be helpful in generating stability to do that if this is the state that you are in. Please understand that I am not advocating for long-term use of antidepressant medication, to be very clear about that. That is not what I am saying. That is not what I'm advocating for. However, if there is a certain level of activation that is causing symptoms that are so severe in a consistent way that you cannot act or move forward with these things, you can't get anywhere with that. So medication is a way that you can calm that down in a physiologic manner and then start to get some traction with this stuff. Just know that once things get settled down and you start to feel stable, it's wise to start slowly tapering off of whatever the pharmaceutical intervention you chose was to gain that stability. Okay. So if you're stuck and you don't feel like you're moving, then I would recommend seeking external support in whatever way you think you need in order to be able to move forward with the content. All right, so for the wound healing component, you are going to need a notebook and a pen as we go through this. We're going to create sort of an algorithm, if you will, flow chart, so it can be helpful to write down the structure of the flow chart as I'm going through the example here. All right, so pause here and grab a notebook and pen if you don't already have one. After a few mornings of reflecting on what you need in order to be happy, enthusiastic about your day and about your life, I want you to look at the list of things that have come up, okay? If you haven't written these down already, I want you to write these things down. And typically there are 1 or 2 or 3 that come up in a way that is pretty loud and pretty clear. So the example that I'm going to use as we create our flowcharts, and the example of one of the things that came up the loudest for me, was my work, my role in healthcare. So as I would sit and ask myself what I needed in order to have this happy, healthy, balanced approach to life and life in general, I would immediately get flooded with work. Your job is wrong. There's something not right here. That needs to change, either your relationship to it or the job itself or something, but it's not right. So it was pretty clear that that was one of the first things that I needed to work on. A lot of times we have that if we're asking ourselves the question. Try not to block out the answer, okay? So if the answer is something like your marriage or some problematic component that you have with a child or something, these are hard things, but you still need to acknowledge to yourself internally that that is what's coming up. It doesn't mean that that has to be the first thing that you deal with, or that that is the first thing that you apply this methodology to. It does not mean that, but you still need to write it down, and you need to write it down in the order that it comes up for you, okay? So from the highest volume thing to maybe the lower volume things. I want you to write all these things down, and I want you to be honest about it no matter how badly you don't want to look at the thing, okay? Write it down. Doesn't mean you have to fix it immediately, but we need to bring awareness to these things. So write them all down, and you are going to pick one. So right now, I want you to pick one of the things, and you're going to, and it doesn't, obviously you haven't had time to sit in reflection of this necessarily. So pick something that maybe is problematic. I'm going to use work as an example. All right. Work. Write it down. Okay. Or my relationship with my boyfriend, write it down. Whatever it is for you, that's your first box in this flow chart. Okay. So you have this thing that has been coming up as a barrier, coming from your knowing, your truth, your intuition, that is flagging as being problematic to you cultivating happiness and positivity in your life. So then you're going to ask yourself the question of, is this a pillar, an architectural structure of my external life that is going to require a complete teardown? Do I have to scrap this entirely? Or is it just needing a remodel? Or do I just need to clean it out? Or, is there some way that I can work from within it that doesn't require me to completely scrap the whole thing? So if the answer to this question of, is my job in this example something that I absolutely have to tear down and start from scratch? If the answer to that question is yes, I want you to make an arrow going to the left and write yes in that box, okay? So this means I see that this is abusive. I see that this is killing me from the inside out. I see this whole structure is rotten, and it just is gonna have to go because it is not capable of holding the higher vibrational life force that I am now carrying. And I see that, and I know it's gotta go, okay? If the answer to that question is yes, it's a teardown, create the arrow to the left, write yes, okay? Now, if the answer to that question is either no or I'm not sure, okay? You're going to draw an arrow going to the right, and you're going to write no in the box. Okay. So you have the thing, work. Is it a teardown? Yes, it's a teardown, box to the left. No, it's not a teardown, box to the right. Okay. If it's a tear down, we're going to go down that side of the algorithm first. The next question after the yes, and I want you to write this down under the box yes. Are you ready to tear it down? Are you ready to scrap it? Okay. If the answer to that question is no, for any reason, maybe you're not financially ready. Maybe you're not emotionally ready. Maybe you don't have the social support that you need. Maybe, someone else is in crisis in your immediate life and you just don't have the space or capacity to deconstruct the thing right now. If the answer is no, I'm not ready for any reason, make an arrow going to the right and write no in another box. Okay? If the answer to the question is yes, I am ready to rip this Band-Aid off. I have a savings account. I already know what I'm going to do for a new career. I already know what I'm going to do to start my own business after I leave this system. I already know. If you're ready for action and you already know this has to be a teardown and you are ready to start making palpable moves to detach yourself from the thing and start all over, to tear it down and to start rebuilding a different structure there, then create an arrow that goes to the left and right, yes. Okay. Under that yes, I want you to list all of the things that you see as being available action steps that you are going to start doing in order to untether yourself from this thing, in order to tear down this building and start the process of reconstructing a new one. So write these things down. So maybe it's, I need to start actively looking for other employment. Maybe it's, I need to start training for this other skill set that I want to bring into my employment that maybe isn't quite there yet, but could be. Maybe it's, I need to save money so that I can make this jump. Maybe it's, I need to take a different job, even if it doesn't pay as much, so that I can move away from these things. So whatever that happens to be, make the list of what you are going to do so that you can, without creating an unmanageable amount of chaos for yourself, wipe out that architectural structure, wipe out that building. Okay. So you write down the things you have to do in order to do that safely and effectively and in a way that doesn't have a backlash that negatively impacts you or your family or anybody else. Okay, if the answer was no, I'm not ready to do it. I know that it's a teardown, but I'm not ready to take that action. You're going to move to the right-hand side of this flow chart for now, even if you know it's a teardown. We're going to operate from that side of things until you are ready to do something about it. All right. So now we're going to go to the other side. If you have the square of work, if the answer to the question is either no or I don't know, if it's a teardown or a remodel, under the box of no or I don't know, you are going to say, okay, what are options for repairing this? So what are options for remodels? Where do I want to put the bathroom? Where does the hallway need to go? Does this wall need to be blown out? Okay. So you're looking at things like, do I still want to work within this company? Do I still want to work in the same field, but for a different company? Do I need my role to change in the current company? Do I have too much work? Do I not have enough work? Am I not getting paid well enough? Like, am I having to constantly interface in a work environment that is largely negative and difficult to deal with? What is it that you need to improve, that you need to remodel in order to find happiness in this situation, in this structure, in this building? Okay. What do you need to look different? And so then once you have this information of some possibilities that could come up or manifest that would potentially help make this better, start acting on them and start advocating for yourself. If you're overworked, try going to your superior and being like, this is too much. I need it to slow down. This is how I need it to look, and be clear about this. This is why you're writing about this first. What does it look like? What do you need to change? How much slower do you need it to be? If it's a negative interaction with a person or group of people, or just negativity in the environment, how can you bring forth positivity and shift that? How can you improve your communication skills in order to facilitate a more healthy environment? If you need to change roles in your company for whatever reason, advocating for that, being clear about where you think you would be a better fit, in what department, doing what work. All right, there's a lot of different ways these can look, but make this list and then start acting it out. So you're going to start actually trying to implement the things that you think would make it better. Okay, so give this a little time. Once you start doing this, if you advocate for a new position or start communicating with someone differently, give it a matter of weeks, maybe months, before you analyze it again and let things sort of shift. Like, give the vibration an opportunity to increase before you make any decisions about things. So start trialing these interventions, start trialing these things that you think would make it better. And after a period of time, and I want you to write this below the list of things that you can do to see if it's going to get better. You're going to write and circle this. Did it work? Did it work? Did advocating for myself work? Was I heard? Did my superiors listen to me? Did they give me what I needed? Or did they just say they were going to do that and not do that, or whatever? Did my change in the way that I communicated with this person or group of people help it to feel less toxic and lighter and better? Was the intervention, or were the cluster of interventions that I implemented for myself, were they effective? And chances are, now, again, if the answer to that question is yes, you're going to write an arrow going to the left, write yes. Okay. And below that, you're going to write, you've created an isotonic environment, or you are creating one. Okay, so if this process is working in terms of remodeling or cleaning out the building, what have you, you are going to feel that. You're going to feel that your superiors hear you. You're going to feel that they're invested in you as an individual and they want to give you what you need in order to be the best version of yourself you can be. You're going to feel better taken care of financially, or you're going to feel better taken care of in terms of how respected your time is. And you are on your way to creating an environment that is isotonic. So an environment where your increase in vibration, your external work environment is able to rise and match that. Okay, so that's one outcome. The other outcome is no, it didn't work. It didn't work. I didn't feel heard. I feel like I'm banging my head against the wall. I've said the same thing 3 times. No matter how I conduct myself in the workplace, it seems like the negativity continues to take over. Whatever it is, you're going to know after a period of time whether or not the thing in question is able to increase with you or not, because it's either going to get better or it isn't. So if the things that you're implementing, if these interventions are not working, you're going to draw an arrow to the right, write no, put a box around it. Underneath that, I want you to write, it might be a teardown. Hate it when this happens. So it might be a teardown, because there are situations, institutions, certain lines of work where it is very difficult to get out from underneath the toxicity of the core of the institution itself. Okay, so as an example of healthcare, so for me, I ran the diagnostics on the right-hand side of this chart, trying to turn it into a remodel and not a teardown for a number of years before I finally ended up in the left-hand side of the chart. And what I kept running into was, no matter what interventions I came up with and implemented, I landed in the same place, which is that I'm participating in an industry that values monetary gain over individual and collective healing, and I don't. So there's something here that can never mix. It can never work, because I'm holding up, by participating in this system, a structure that I fundamentally do not believe in. It rubs up against my moral compass. I think it's wrong. I don't think that it helps a lot of people. And I think actually it is incredibly harmful to very high number of people in the society. So I kept rubbing up against that no matter what I implemented in the right-hand side of the chart. And so eventually I ended up in it's probably a teardown. I moved over to the left side of the chart. I severed myself from it. And as a result of which, now I get to work in a setting that is not morally complicated, that is not difficult for me to want to participate in, that does actually help people get better, that is healthy for me and for the people that are involved in it. If I would not have been willing to tear it down, there would be no escaping the core of the negativity that exists in the current healthcare paradigm. For me, there was no escaping that. So when that's the case with something, that's an example of it needing to be a teardown, because you're not going to be able to interface or interact with every thing that you used to be able to when you were at a lower vibrational frequency. And the more awareness you have around these things that cause, things like greed and not caring about other people, a complete lack of empathy, lying, manipulating, all of these things, you can't fix those things. So at some point, if you're running the right side of this chart and you keep running into those things, you're probably going to have to go to the left, meaning you're going to have to tear it down as a structure of your external environment and build something different there. Okay. So this can take some time. You may have to spend a large number of time running the right-hand side of this chart before you get clarity on whether it's an architectural remodel or a complete teardown. So take your time and try to walk all of the options through to the end, because then you will, if you reach the conclusion that it's a teardown, you're going to be very clear on that if you've run the right side enough times with enough interventions and enough things. So eventually you're going to end up, this is what you have. This is what it looks like. So you can see the different interventions depending on whether or not it's something that completely needs to be extricated from your life, or it's something that you want to keep in your life, but you're needing to work with it a little bit and maybe get creative on the ways that it needs to change, or how your relationship with it needs to change in order for it to increase with your internal environment. Okay, so this is the algorithm, more or less, for creating an isotonic existence. So this is how you are going to analyze and create an external world or story or play for yourself that is a reflection of your ascending vibrational patterns, okay? This is going to take time, and depending on what it is you're currently working on, what exactly it is you're plugging into this chart, it can take years to fully work this out, okay? Examples of things that take years. For me, the career thing has taken years. It has not been a fast process. There has been a lot of grief involved. I went through a lot of school. I gave a lot of my time and energy and heart into something that I ultimately had to walk away from, and it was really difficult. So that one took years. Marriages, a lot of times, take years. If it ends up being a teardown and you end up having to leave, say because your spouse is abusive, or even if your spouse is like, I'm not going to involve myself in this interpersonal work with myself or with you, it's really difficult to continue to be in a partnership with someone if you're deeply involved in this work and the person that you are spending your life with will not do it. You can't make them, and it becomes absolutely unbearable to be in it because of the vibrational mismatch that it causes. Okay, so maybe you start out here with something with your job, your spouse, certain friendships or whatever. You're going up, 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 up. This thing's staying down here. And the more you go up, the more you're going to be like, oh, I hate coming back down here to you, to this job or whatever. And it's going to hurt. And so that's when these things tend to come to a head, and you realize either like it's a teardown and I have to leave, or, you make some other drastic changes as a result, of running the right-hand side of the column. It just looks a little more, aggressive maybe. So this can be a very drawn out process. It's not quick, So once you have the list of things, it can be helpful to separate the things that you perceive as being barriers to your happiness into two categories. You can write the pillars, if you will. These are the big ones. These are the ones we were just talking about, right? Jobs, marriages, family relationships, long-term friendships, that kind of thing. These pillars that are going to take a lot of time. In other words, running some diagnostics on the right-hand side before you make any decisions. Categorize those in one column, and then maybe there's another column where there's some things that aren't necessarily pillars, but things that come up as being obvious causes as blocks to your happiness or creativity. So an example of this maybe is like, well, I watch 1 to 2 hours of TV every night, and I know that prevents me from really plugging into my creativity or from learning something different or new or better in terms of building a skill set or something like that. So I want you to make sure you're only running one of the things that are like these pillar things, these big things at a time. Do not try to analyze and take action on whether or not things like marriages and jobs and family dynamics or whatever are teardowns or architectural remodels, and then be acting on that at the same time. Okay? Because when you have too many things fall apart at the same time, it lends to the stuckness. Okay, it lends to you finding yourself in a state where you can't regulate, you feel isolated, you feel alone, you feel depleted, and there aren't really any resources that are immediately available to help you with that. So only one major thing at a time. Okay, you can look at your marriage first, you could look at your job first, you could look at your relationship with your kids first, okay, you could look at your financial situation first, whatever it is, but these big things, only one at a time, and only one tear down at a time, only one. Do not tear down multiple pillars at the same time. I'm speaking from experience on that one. It's not a good idea. So one at a time. Okay. And with these smaller ones too, you can be working those through on either side of the chart as you're dealing with these bigger pillars. Okay. So you can be trying to reset your relationship with different things that are maybe just architectural remodels that aren't quite so heavy and burdensome as some of these bigger things. You can be working the right side with some of those things while working on a teardown at the same time. That is okay. Just don't take on too many pillars at the same time. It's very easy to get overwhelmed with that. You can use this for relationships. You can use this for your choice in recreational activities. You can use this for works, habit. That this chart can be used for anything that comes up as being a barrier between you and your happiness in life. Okay. So also, I want you to look at your map from week 4, and I want you to look at your column 1, which was the emotions and the experiences that pushed you towards use, okay? And your column 3, which was your sort of default response to these experiences. And I want you to really look at and feel into how cultivation of these things in your internal environment manifested externally or have manifested externally. Okay, so if you find yourself noticing things like, there's a lot of gossip in your friendships, or there's a lot of like negative components that are coming through in those, or there's a lot of negativity in your work, how has your state, so your column 1 and column 3 specifically, contributed to the existence of that being in your external world? So I want you to really understand this, because we create through the lens that we have, through which we view the world, and in our external lives, our stories, our existence, what we generate in here in terms of frequency and charge. And so if you can really understand that, okay, I grew up with a certain set of behavioral characteristics that cultivated these emotions that carry a particular charge to them. I then harbor these subconsciously without understanding that's what I'm doing. And I outwardly manifest these to create a life that has all of them, all of the ingredients, all of the components as part of it. So if you can start to see this, it's going to be easier to apply it using positivity. And you're going to start to see that faster and faster. So the more you generate things that cultivate positivity, the more you're going to project that out. And it's going to stop being a process that is subconscious, okay? Because chances are when you're vibrating down at this lower level of things, you've got ignorance clouding you, you've got all these emotions clouding you, you've got all this stuff. It's not that you have awareness that this is what you're doing. So we're going to turn this from a subconscious process that happens into something that is conscious. So if you can start to understand, I see now how my programmed behaviors and the vibrational frequency that those things carry manifested inside of me, and then how I took those things and created them, baked them into my current experience here. The more you can understand that, then you can take that subconscious happening from the first chapter of your existence, and you can turn it into a conscious happening using only positive elements. Okay? So the more you become aware of that, the more you'll be able to transmute it from this subconscious skill that cultivates dark, dense, problematic components to a conscious skill that has only the ingredients at the vibrational range that you want to include in and for your life. Okay, so really try to take some time and reflect on, understand that that's up until this point how that has worked for you, and that it has worked for you without your conscious understanding of that being what was going on, okay? Because you can't fix anything you can't see. So once you see this for what it is and you understand it, oftentimes we got to get through some layers of shame with this, and we got to sit with like, oh my God, I was such a shithead or whatever, and that's fine. But once you get through that and you understand it as a principle, like don't get caught up in the emotion of the thing, it's super cool because you can harness it as a skill set and add different elements, and you got a completely different set of external circumstances for yourself before you know it. So reflect on how that was before and how you see how it was happening without your understanding, and really feel into how you are going to turn this into a conscious process, which you can do by using the flow chart that we just created. Okay, so that's a way that you can do that. If you are clear that a teardown needs to happen, okay, so things like abusive dynamics can fall under this category. My career eventually fell under this category where it was just like, there's absolutely no way around this. This is killing me. It's toxic, for things like this, where you're just absolutely clear that there is not a path forward and that it's going to require a teardown. If you know this and you become paralyzed, meaning you're like, oh my God, I can't stay, I can't go, I can't do anything, I can't, you just become stuck and paralyzed. Fear causes this. Fear causes physiologic paralysis of our nerves. So if this comes up and you find yourself stuck or paralyzed in fear, I want you to first take some breaths, okay? And then I want you to get clear on and write down what you are afraid of. What are you afraid of? Are you afraid of financial consequences? Are you afraid of being alone? Are you afraid you're not going to be able to find another partner? Are you afraid that someone you're in a relationship with is going to physically harm you if you leave? Or someone you care about? The list goes on, but get clear on what you are afraid of, okay? And then you're going to start acting in ways that directly confront or counteract that fear. In other words, you're going to create a scenario through your actions that render the fear no longer necessary. Okay, so say your fear is financial and you don't have enough money to make a career jump. Well, you're gonna figure out some things that you can do to acquire more money for yourself. Maybe it's working more, maybe it's changing jobs, maybe it's asking for financial help from someone if that's an option. So you're gonna brainstorm these things so that when you see that fear come up, you know that it's no longer valid. Okay, you know, like, nope, I actually have saved some money, or I actually have this job that I know is going to take care of me over here. So like, I don't need to be scared of that. So now I can move forward. Now I'm no longer paralyzed by this. If it's needing to create a safe environment for yourself, like maybe you are leaving a relationship and you don't have anywhere to go, and that's what's causing the fear of, is like, I don't have anywhere to go and I can't stay and this is harmful and I don't know what to do. Okay, so take that fear and sit in that as a reality. Okay, you say like, all right, as of now, I don't have anywhere else to go, and that is the reality of the situation. Right now, I am stuck because I have nowhere else to go, and I'm in this situation that is harming me and potentially, you know, anyone else that you're living with, any kids or anything. And so I'm paralyzed by this fear of like, yeah, well, where am I going to go? Okay, sit in that and then start taking actions to create an out for yourself. Lean on any external support structures that you have. If you have family that you can reside with for a time, or maybe you start working or do something different with work so that you can save up money to provide that for yourself. It's whatever is available to you. There's always a way out, but fear will make you convinced that there is not a way out. So we have to penetrate that. We have to disprove it. We have to behave in ways that help to create an understanding that there is a path forward and there is a way out, and you are not stuck in anything. So, and even if it means, you know, that you're going to have to do some things prior to being able to take action, say to, you know, like leave the partnership or whatever, that's okay. At least if you see the fear, you see what you're scared of, you sit in it, right? You say, well, yep, I'm scared of the financial consequences. And the truth is that if I leave my job right now, I won't be financially okay. Like, that is the truth. Okay, well, then now you start behaving in ways so that that becomes untrue. Okay, so that is no longer true. You're like, nope, I have worked really hard over the last 6 months. I saved a bunch of money. That's no longer valid. That's no longer a reason not to proceed forward, and you go for it. Or, you know, I have created an environment outside of this one that I inhabit with this person who is toxic, and I have spent some time doing that. I know it's a safe place I can go. I have contacted the authorities so that I don't have to worry about this person physically harming me. Whatever the story is, break down those barriers of fear, because it only can keep you stuck if you believe that it's true. And there's always a way out, and this idea that there isn't a way out is never true. So if you run into a thick wall of fear as you go along in this process, that is one way that you can deconstruct that so that you can sort of get back to an action place with whatever it is that you're dismantling. Okay. So this obviously is not something that you parcel out in a week. What the goal is with this is to start training your brain to think about these barriers, these problems this way with the flowchart. Okay. So you're trying to train yourself to approach these things differently. What are the barriers between you and your happiness? And how do you deconstruct them, or how do you change them in order to be an accurate reflection of a rising vibratory pattern? So this is going to take a lot of time. And also, if you can train your brain to cognitively approach these things in that way, you'll prevent yourself from getting stuck, and it'll be easier to move forward into action as you confront these things that perhaps you've been avoiding, or that you're recently discovering are no longer good matches for, you know, where you are and where you're heading in terms of your own vibrational frequency. So As always, take a little more time if you need to, and if not, we'll see you next week for week 9. Thank you.